I bought a small ranch outside Johnson City, Texas, to enjoy my retirement. 18 acres of cedar and live oak, a ribbon of pedernales wind threading the back pasture, and enough fence line to keep my 2 donkeys, 8 goats, 3 alpacas, and 20 hens exactly where I wanted them. My daughter decided the ranch was better suited for a DJ booth, ticket sales on her phone, and a fleet of strangers stomping my Bermuda grass flat. So the night she took over again, I did the only reasonable thing. I opened the gates to the house pasture and let every last animal out so they could have some fun too. By sunrise the next day, I had a busted folding bar, an alpaca footprint on a neon banner, and a video of my donkey stealing someone's charcuterie. I also had something better. Proof. You don't turn 66 and let yourself be pushed out of your own kitchen. You gathered the receipts and you push back. Quick pause. Subscribe, hit like, and drop your city in the comments so I can say hi next time. I'll start at the beginning. I retired from the San Marcos School District in the spring of 2023. 38 years of teaching second grade, a drawer full of crayon thank you notes, and a knee that clicks when I climb stairs. After my husband passed, I promised myself I'd buy the kind of place I always pointed at from the highway. The Blue Hen Ranch, I called it. I'd paint the coop that color and keep a little egg stand out front. I closed on the property in August. Blanco County clerk stamped the deed on the 22nd at 3:19 p.m. I know because I slid the certified copy into my receipt tin the second I got home. I made a list on LegalPad, buy a used tractor, move my quilting frame into the spare bedroom, plant hydrangeas on the north side where the shade keeps them honest. I baked cornbread in my cast iron skillet and set the first pie on the wide kitchen windowsill. That October, I joined the choir at First Baptist, Alto, and met half the county in one potluck Saturday. My daughter, Shauna, came out the next weekend with her boyfriend, Blaze, 26, limbs like a foal, a wide smile that never reached his eyes. "We're so happy for you, Mom," Shauna said, hugging me hard enough to make my pill organizer rattle in my purse. "Don't you love the air?" I asked. It smelled like clean hay, rosemary, and the cedar fence warming in the sun. Blaze smiled at the pastures. "This would be an incredible venue," he said. "For what?" I asked. "Sunset sessions," he said, like the words were already printed on a billboard. "Acoustic sets, then a DJ, like a day-to-night thing. You could charge at the gate, Mom. It'd pay property tax." I laughed because it was so out of scale to the life I was building. "Y'all can bring a blanket and a Bluetooth speaker. That's the only set I'm running." The first visit was fine. They helped me hang solar fairy lights along the back porch and took selfies with the alpacas, Dolores, Midge, and Peanut. They left on Sunday with a carton of eggs and a pan of cinnamon rolls. On Tuesday, I found a half-inch gash in my new gate post where someone had backed into it. I texted Shauna at 11:14 a.m. "Gate damaged. Do you know anything about this?" She wrote back, "No, maybe weather?" The weather had been 78 and windless. 2 weeks later, a neighbor called. "Marilyn, it's Ray, across County Road 204. You hosting a shindig?" "No," I said, stirring beans with a wooden spoon. "Because your lane is lined with cars, and there's a bass line carrying all the way to my back porch." I drove to the end of the lane and saw it. A string of Subarus and rented Jeeps, 2 Teslas with plates from Austin, and a boy with a portable heater in a windbreaker charging $20 a wristband. I eased my Subaru through the cattle guard and parked by the barn, heart tapping like a cardinal at the glass. They'd set a folding bar atop my sawhorses. There was a square reader plugged into Shauna's phone, bingo lights on the fence, a DJ tent draped in nectarine-colored fabric. The haystack had been pushed into seating with old quilts I recognized from my cedar chest. I walked straight to the bar. "This is my property," I said. "You need to leave." "Mom, don't make it weird," Shauna said softly, wrapping a lanyard around her wrist. "It's just friends." "Friends buying wristbands?" I asked, because even my second graders understood show and tell. She hesitated, then put the lanyard behind her back like I couldn't see. It's voluntary, for the music. The generator grumbled behind the tent. I could smell diesel. I could see cigarette butts near my hay. Blaze caught my eye. "We're almost done," he called cheerfully. "This is community building." That phrase cooked something inside me. I walked out of the crowd and dialed the county non-emergency number. There's a large gathering on my property, unpermitted, with a generator near hay bales. The deputy who came out had shoulders like a bookshelf. He did a slow look at IDs and said, "Folks, time to wrap it up." People laughed, but they left. Shauna and Blaze left too, after telling me I was overreacting. "You're winding yourself up," Shauna said, moving empty LaCroix cans into a bag. "It's not like we're charging a cover." I swept glass off the patio until my shoulders shook. At 12:08 a.m., I got a ping on my phone. Instagram, @shauna.sunset, had posted a story. In it, my porch looked like the cover of a magazine. The caption read, "Sunset Sessions, $25 suggested donation, BYOB, DM for address." There was a little star emoji, then my porch again, then a pan to the oak grove where my donkey Luther stood in the shadows like a chaperone. At 9:02 a.m., I took screenshots of every frame and printed them, date-stamped. I slid the stack into a labeled manila folder, Shauna, Events. I wrote the date at the top of a yellow legal pad page and the words, "Escalation starts." The next week, Shauna arrived with a box of paper lanterns and a big bag of limes. "I booked a folk duo," she said. "They're county. It's local." "You are not booking anything," I said. "No more events. I mean it." She sighed. "You're being so closed. If you let me manage it, we can do this right." "What does manage mean?" I asked. "It means I take the stress off you. I'll be the point person." "I have no stress," I said, and I meant it, except the stress you bring through my gate. They left, this time in a simmer. I put a note in my phone, November 12th, told Shauna no events. She disagreed. On the 14th, I got a fraud alert from my bank about an application for a home equity line of credit. "We received your inquiry and have begun processing. If this was not you, call the fraud unit." I held the phone so tightly the case creaked. The woman at the bank was careful. "Ma'am, do you have a co-applicant named—" She stopped. "Actually, I shouldn't say." "Say it," I said, my teacher voice returning all on its own. "Blaze, last name omitted. We flagged it because the signatures didn't match your signature card." I wrote down the case number and the date, and the first name she'd accidentally said. I printed the email. I also wrote HELOC attempt in red on my yellow pad. That's when I went to the Blanco County Clerk's office. The air smelled like paper and toner, and the clerk with a braid down to her waist knew me from choir. "Looking for any documents filed on my parcel," I told her, sliding my property ID number across the counter. She clicked and frowned. "There was a memorandum of use agreement recorded last Friday from you to Hillstar Events LLC. Gives them an exclusive license to host monthly community gatherings for 12 months. "No?" "It's notarized," she added, like the stamp was a spell. The signature next to my typed name was a scrawl that tried very hard to be mine. The notary's name was Kyle Whitaker, with a commission that read clean to the naked eye. The recorded time was 4:52 p.m., and I had a photo on my phone from 4:57 p.m. of me holding a jar of apricots at HEB with my friend Ellie, who'd tagged me. We were 40 miles away. The clerk printed the memorandum and handed me the copy like it might burn. I drove home with the paper on the passenger seat, buckled in. I pulled out my receipt tin and found the HEB receipt too. 4:53 p.m., apricot halves, $5.29. I sat at the dining table and made a new folder labeled Title. I added the memorandum and the receipt. I called my title company, and they put me on with a claims person who said,
We see this sometimes, cloud on title filings to force concessions. She told me to file an affidavit of non-consent with the recorder, and I did. Shauna came by that night. "You made it so difficult," she said, eyes flicking to the papers fanned out on the table. "It's not like I forged anything. We're family." "You filed a document on my property with a fake signature," I said. "That's not family, that's fraud." "I did not," she said in a softer voice, like soft would undo ink. "Did Blaze?" I asked. "No," she said too quick. "Mom, this is why we need something formal, so you'll feel safe." My donkeys stood in the windows like big-eared statues. The goats shuffled in the pole barn. I could smell the hay and the onion sweetness of my cornbread cooling. I pulled out a certified letter I had prepared. Revocation of permission to occupy, Shauna and Blaze. The green return receipt stickers were pre-affixed. "No more events, no more visits without asking, no more keys. I will mail this, and I will text a copy." She stared at the envelope the way a second grader looks at the principal's door. Then she laughed, shook her head, and walked out to the porch. "You can't stop the community," she said, and closed the screen door too hard. I called Adult Protective Services after I hung up with the bank fraud unit because my church ladies told me to. "It's not that I feel weak," I said to the woman who answered. "It's that my daughter is using my age as a lever." The caseworker's name was Maria. She said the word exploitation, and it vibrated like a tuning fork in my ribs. Late November, Shauna's Instagram showed a drone shot of my oak grove. The caption, "Holiday House, 18 acres of stars, DM." I printed it. Early December, my neighbor Ray dropped by with a bag of deer sausage and a look. "They told one of my men they rented your place," he said. "I know Shauna. She's run some art shows at breweries, right? But the word is there's a New Year's thing, 200 people." He looked at my little kitchen and the gingerbread men cooling beside my cast iron. "That's not safe out here, not with our roads." I called the Blanco County Fire Marshal's office. "Do they have permits?" I asked. "For tents, generators, portable heaters?" The deputy fire marshal sounded tired. "Ma'am, we issue for commercial. Private property with house parties is gray until it becomes not gray." I called the TABC tips line and left a message. There are wristbands and a bar. I also looked up the notary, Kyle Whitaker. The Secretary of State website shows commissions, and his was real. But when I scrolled his Instagram, public, pride of youth, he had posted a photo from Lake Travis on the exact date and time stamped on the memorandum, 4:37 p.m. "Killing daylight," the caption read. I printed that too. I called the Secretary of State's notary complaints line. "I am not filing a revenge letter," I said evenly. "I am reporting a notarization that I believe was not conducted in front of me." By Christmas, I was tired of using my dining table as a war room. I cleared the papers into cardboard banker's boxes and tucked them into my closet. I hung my winter quilt in the living room, and the place looked like a home again. Teal and cream squares, stitched by my hands on quiet nights. A week later, a text. "New Year's, just family, heart." I typed back, "No." Then I put my phone in a drawer and baked a pecan pie. New Year's was quiet, because Ray parked his tractor across my driveway with my permission, and the sheriff ran a car by twice. It was quiet until mid-January, when Blaze posted a short clip of my porch with a house track under it. "Summer's shaping up, sunset sessions, shh." The emoticon made my jaw clench. My bank called again. Someone had attempted to add a manager to my online banking. They had used my mother's maiden name and got it wrong. A small mercy. I printed that notice and added it to the bank folder. Shauna and I didn't speak for a month. Then in late March, she arrived with grocery sacks and a smile that shone. "A peace offering," she said. "Let me grill. Let me fix your gate." She cooked chicken thighs and stood under the string lights like a child in a memory. I wanted to believe her so hard I tasted metal. "We can host a small family picnic on the 4th, she said gentle. "Just us. No music. I promise." I looked at the water shimmering in the stock tank like hammered tin. I looked at the goats soft footing into the shadows, the hens pecking in the dirt like they were crossing tiny streets. "Just us," I said. no flyers, no DMs, no wristbands. If a single car shows up that I do not know, you will not be welcome here again." She nodded, big-eyed, and kissed my cheek. "Thank you, Mom." On July 2nd, my choir friend Ellie texted me a screenshot from a friend of a friend. "Sunset Sessions July 3, Secret Ranch, link in bio." I clicked through and saw it there. The same nectarine fabric draped over a different tent, a DJ I did not know, a Cash App, $Sunset Shauna, and DM for address written like graffiti. I went to the barn and sat on an overturned bucket. I could feel my pulse in my wrists. I called Maria at APS. "It's happening," I said, "and I need a clean plan." She talked me through what she could talk me through. She said, "You have already revoked consent. You have your documentation. If they come, call the sheriff, film everything. Do not put yourself at risk. Make sure your animals are safe." At 10 a.m. on July 3rd, I drove to Tractor Supply and bought 3 extra latches. I closed the front gate with a chain and hung a sign, "Private, no entry." I walked the fence line with Ray and checked every stretch. The only gates I loosened were the ones that kept the house pasture separate from the oak grove and the garden. The outer gate stayed locked, like a vault. I laid apple slices in a trail over the lawn, set a tub of fresh water near the patio, and tied little bells to the donkey's halters because it made me laugh. I put Dolores' halter on too and brushed her until she blinked in slow bliss. Then I charged my phone, put a pecan pie in the oven, and waited. At 6:17 p.m., Good Shoes arrived. Sandals that don't know dirt. Then gleaming cars started turning into my drive one by one, then by the dozen, ignoring the sign. The chain had been moved. I breathed once and called the sheriff and said the words, "trespassers" and "revoked consent." I took a picture of the moved chain. I called the fire marshal dispatcher too because a man unloaded propane heaters I had not ordered. Blaze walked in like he had invented sun. Shauna wore a floral dress. I had once bought her for Easter. "Just family," I said, stepping out from behind the chicken coop. "Just a few friends," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I will ask you to stop one more time," I said clearly, camera rolling. "This is my property. You do not have my consent to host an event, sell anything, or invite people." She smiled too brightly. "Mom, relax. It's not even dark." The DJ turned up something shiny and loud. The goats lined up at the fence like a jury. A boy in a trucker's hat set up an ice trough full of canned cocktails. I could smell someone lighting citronella, the whiff of my rosemary, the sugar burn of churros from a food truck that had somehow found its way down my lane. I went to the barn and opened the first gate. The goats poured through like a woolly river. Biscuit hopped sideways and head-butted a cooler. Someone squealed. Dolores, the alpaca, walked straight for the nectarine tent, curious as a toddler, and tasted the fabric with her lips until it tore. Luther, my big donkey, put his bridle bells into the beat and shook like he was in a mariachi band. The hens came last, cool queens in feathers, and they climbed the steps to my porch like it was always meant to be theirs. I filmed wide and then close, the way my church ladies had taught me when they documented our craft fair. I got the square reader glowing on the bar, the stack of wristbands, the cash box. I filmed the Venmo QR taped to a mason jar. I filmed a girl in a branded t-shirt counting out comps. I filmed Shauna whispering in Blaze's ear and pointing at me. The DJ tried to boom over the bray of Luther, who found the charcuterie board and delicately lifted a salami rose in his lips like a rare flower. I had already texted Ray and Maria. I texted my choir friend Ellie, and she said, "I'm coming to stand with you." I went inside and turned on every lamp because if this was a stage, I would light it. Red and blue lights jumped at the end of the lane, then slid across the yard, calm. A deputy stepped out, Deputy Klein, the bookshelf shoulders, hands open, posture neutral. "Evening," he said. "Property owner here?" "I am," I said, "and I have revoked consent for these gatherings. There are sales occurring. I have video." I handed him my phone like it was a newborn.
He watched Luther nose a prosciutto curl into glory. "We're going to ask folks to leave," he said. "Please don't impede, and please keep your animals from hitting the road." "The road gate's locked," I said. "They're just enjoying my grass." He smiled, quick, then went to do his job. He spoke to the DJ, then to Blaze, then to Shauna. Blaze's smile broke apart and reassembled into something like offense. Shauna's chin trembled. I kept my hands on Dolores's halter and whispered her a story about apples growing out of the moon. People left in pairs, then in clumps, carrying their shoes. Someone filmed Luther and tagged #SunsetSessionsFail, and I didn't know that yet, but it would matter later. The food truck backed out like a reluctant ship. The DJ loaded his lights, shoulders slouched, and wiped alpaca damp from his equipment with a towel. Shauna stayed, arms wrapped around herself. She said, "You didn't have to make it public." I said, "You did. You did when you posted it. You did when you filed a document on my property. You did when you let strangers walk through my house to use my bathroom." "It's not like that," she said, exhausted. "It is exactly like that," I said, and my voice surprised me with its calm. "Stay till the end. I'll show the truth." The next morning, I unhooked the bridle bells and made coffee. The animals slept like angels under the oaks, wholly satisfied with their debut. My porch looked like the inside of a piñata. Confetti in the cracks, sticky rings on the rail, a forgotten shoe under my rocking chair. The sheriff's office left a voicemail referencing a criminal trespass affidavit, which meant I could sign a form that would let them warn people off in my absence. The fire marshal emailed too, asking for any photos that showed heaters or generators near flammable material. I made folders on my desktop and labeled each one like a librarian. At 11:25 a.m., my bank emailed, "We have closed the HELOC application as fraudulent." At noon, a new email. "Secretary of State Notary Complaints Unit, we have received your report. Please forward any evidence related to the date and time of notarization." I sent them the clerk-stamped memorandum, my HEB receipt, and the notary's lake photo. I added a polite paragraph. "I am not vindictive. I am accurate." At 1:09 p.m., an Eventbrite page went dark. "Sunset Sessions has been removed," but the comments remained for a few hours. "Whose alpaca was that?" one read. "Iconic." Another, "That mom is a legend." Someone linked a clip to TikTok. I put my phone in a drawer again because I could feel dizziness at the edges of my day. I made chicken soup and hummed Blessed Assurance until my breath settled. Shauna didn't call. She posted a story that night of a different porch with a plastic flamingo in the corner and wrote, "We were bullied by the system." I printed that with the timestamp and the system words circled because words are so slippery, and I have learned to pin them to paper like butterflies so I can study their pattern, not just their flash. On Monday, I went to the county clerk and filed the trespass affidavit. The clerk slid the paper back, stamped and cool. I mailed 2 certified letters, one to Shauna, one to Blaze, both with green slips dangling like a final warning. The letters read, "Any further entry by either of you or any agent of yours will be considered trespass. Respectfully, Marilyn." I mailed copies to Hill Star Events LLC at their registered agent address because I had looked that up too and printed it and slid it into a folder. The will to throw another party deflated like a cheap balloon. The will to take something anyway found another shape. On Wednesday, my neighbor Ray brought me a mason jar of honey and a rumor clinging to it like bees. "Heard at the co-op that Blaze tried to sell a stake in your ranch to a friend," he said. Eyes apologetic, like he personally could fix my family. Like a creative investment. Word is he told them he had a right to host events for a year and showed them a notarized paper. I sat down on the step. "He's circulating the memorandum," I said. "The fake one."
Sounds like it, Ray said. He patted my shoulder like you pat a good dog. You're doing the right thing, Mar. I called Maria at APS and she said she could attend a meeting at my house if I wanted one with Shauna. Voluntary, not adversarial. A chance to document that I had said no and to show the emotional aspect of no to my own child, which is a special kind of hard. We scheduled for Friday at 3 p.m. I set out a plate of cookies and brewed coffee strong enough to hold its own. Shauna arrived with no blaze, and that loosened my jaw a little. Maria wore a blue blazer and carried a notebook big enough to hold a life. "Thank you for being here," Maria said to both of us, equally polite. She explained her role. Not law enforcement, not an attorney, but a witness to patterns. Exploitation often looks like help at first, she said gently. Shauna's eyes filled, carrying a sadness I recognized. It is heavy to be told you are hurting someone when you meant to help yourself feel less, whatever it is, lost, important, needed. "I love you," I said, and I meant it so much it scraped. "Then don't make me the bad guy," she said, tiny. "You make your own shape, Shauna," I said, "and you've pressed that shape into my land without my permission." Maria wrote. Shauna wiped her eyes roughly, the way my second graders would when the feeling was bigger than their little systems. "I just wanted to build something," she whispered. "Build something that isn't on my porch," I said, and not unkindly. "Build something that is yours." The room was too quiet. The coo purr of the chickens, Henrietta and Pearl, lifted through the window screens like a lullaby. Maria asked Shauna to sign a brief statement acknowledging that I had revoked her permission to use the property for events, that she understood trespass, that she would not attempt to access my banking. Shauna signed, quick lines like someone hurrying past a difficult view. "Can I still come for dinner?" she asked, a hoarseness in her throat. "Yes," I said. "Text me first." 2 days later, she did not text first. A delivery truck pulled up with rental chairs at 2 p.m. 2 dozen? He asked. "For sunset sessions?" I laughed in a way that made him step back. "Wrong address," I said. When I called the rental company, the woman on the phone read back the order. Blaze, Hillstar Events, my address. I called the sheriff, then I called my attorney, the only new character in my story, and made an appointment for Monday. I had avoided that step because I like to fix things with cookies and strong words. But a person can like cookies and strong words and also need someone who writes letters on heavy paper. By Sunday, the notary complaint unit emailed, "We have opened a case. Please be advised we may request the notary's journal and other evidence." At 5 p.m., a message from a woman I did not know landed in my Instagram DMs. "Hi, I'm a notary." I saw the video and recognized Kyle. He notarized a paper for me at a coffee shop in Austin at 5 p.m. on the date on your doc. I have the receipt. I asked if she would email me a copy. She did. It showed a 5:48 p.m. chai latte purchase at Common Grounds and a receipt scribble, notary fee $10 cash. My apricot halves were at Hill Country at 5:43. Kyle was in Austin at 5 o'clock. I circled each minute like a tiny compass point. I would take that little compass into every conversation until it oriented the room. The week flicked past like cards. I stocked the fridge. I cleaned the coop. I folded quilts and stacked them in my cedar chest where they belonged. I took a photo of my hydrangeas holding onto blue in a Texas July, like brave old ladies wearing pearls in a heat wave. I kept my phone on loud because when you are collecting truth, you don't want to miss its ring. On Thursday, a voicemail from a man whose voice had corporate polish. "This is Alan with Hillstar Events. We'd like to propose a settlement to allow us to host 2 more events to recoup our investment." I wrote down his number, then wrote "no" next to it in block letters I used to teach children to form. I spent Friday morning at my attorney's office. Her name was Patience, fitting, and her yellow legal pads were lined in the same faint blue as mine. She wrote while I spoke. Trespass affidavit, fraudulent memorandum, attempted HELOC, square reader sales, rental deliveries, sheriff's visit, fire marshal photos, notary complaint, Instagram stories, Eventbrite page. She circled exclusive license and memorandum 3 times. "We can file a petition to quiet title regarding the bogus memorandum, a demand letter to Hillstar, and we'll explore a restraining order if needed. We keep it clean." "Clean," I said, sighing. "Yes." She smiled. "That alpaca video did some of the heavy lifting, too." "Dolores has star power," I agreed.
That afternoon, I mended a tear in the nectarine fabric. Yes, I kept it, and yes, I will make it into a quilt square. My phone pinged, a private number. "You think you won because you have animals?" the voice said. "We'll be back." I let the message play twice, and then I forwarded it to Deputy Klein. He called me back. "We can add that to your file," he said. "And if you get any more delivery attempts or people on property, call us." On Sunday, I attended church and sat next to Ellie in the alto section. Our hymn rose like a soft field of grain. After, a woman in a denim jacket hugged me and whispered, "Your donkey is a hero." I laughed, a little embarrassed, a little proud. In the fellowship hall, a man from the county paper asked if I wanted to talk on the record. "No, thank you," I said. "I want to grow my hydrangeas and feed my hens and be left alone." When I got home, the house smelled like lemon oil and clean. I set my cast iron on the stove and poured oil until it ribboned. I cracked eggs and whisked them to sunshine. I looked out at the yard, the goat prints, the place where the bar had gouged the grass, and I knew the story wasn't finished. Not yet. There was a knot still to untie, slim as fishing line and just as stubborn. Because if you've ever untied fishing line, you know, you loosen one tangle and another shows itself, a loop within a loop. Blaze had one more trick, and Shauna had one more choice. The choice arrived in my mailbox with a $7 stamp, a letter from Hillstar Lens, notice of damages, demanding $6,200 for lost revenue due to my interference on July 3. The letterhead was all caps in a font that looked like a Jim's. "We will pursue all legal remedies," it read. It was signed by Alan, who had called me with that polished voice. I set the letter beside my cast iron skillet and smiled, because it was so big and so silly. I slid it into the Hillstar folder. Then I pulled out my calendar and circled 3 dates: the hearing on my petition to quiet title, the notary complaint interview date, and the small claims date Passion had filed for property damage: broken gate post, trampled beds, bar gouges, diesel spill cleanup, $3,127, with receipts. I had stapled every receipt to the claim packets like a quilter tacking a binding. I had photos of my hydrangea bed before and after. The after looked like a shoe had made its home there. Shauna texted, "Ignore Hillstar." I called her. She answered on the 4th ring. "I told them to stop," she said quickly. Her voice was thinner. "I didn't sign that letter." "Do you want to be in this with me, or do you want to be in it with them?" "With you," she said, and the words sounded like she had gone a long way to pick them up. "Then you'll need to tell the truth," I said. She did something brave 3 hours later. She sent me a PDF of a Slack conversation between her and Alan, dated June 20. "We're pushing for 300 ticks on July 3, he wrote. "Get your mom to chill. The memorandum locks it in." Shauna had answered, "She didn't sign that." Alan, "Kyle notarized it. We're clean." I printed the PDF, hole punched it, and tucked it into Hillstar Communications. "Keep watching. There will be justice." Patience sent a demand letter to Hillstar. "Cease and desist all use of Miss Harper's name, property, or likeness and withdraw the fraudulent memorandum within 5 business days. Failure to comply will result in claims for slander of title, trespass, and conversion." She wrote on that thick paper that makes a sound like a book being born. Hillstar's response came in the form of a counterletter from a firm in Austin that said a lot without saying much. "Our clients acted in good faith," it read, which is the legal version of "we meant well." Patients wrote back with copies of the bank's fraud report, the trespass affidavit, the sheriff's incident report, and still images of the square reader and the wristband box on my sawhorses. She included a link to the donkey video because sometimes a bray tells the truth better than a brief. On the notary front, the Secretary of State investigator called me from a number with a 512 area code. "We've requested Mr. Whitaker's journal," she said, voice even like a ruler. "We'll also be interviewing him." A week later, she called again. He recorded the notarization in his journal at 4:50 p.m., but he could not provide the signer's ID, and he admitted he had not seen you sign. She paused. "We appreciate your documentation." I made biscuits to celebrate because you cannot cheers with paper. I split one open, steam curling like a promise, and I ate it standing up in my kitchen, butter slipping down my fingers. I wiped my hands on a dish towel with embroidered hens and wrote SOS Notary Admission on my legal pad with the date and time. Small claims court was held in a room with folding chairs and a clock that ticked like a metronome you couldn't ignore. The judge had hair the color of steel and the kind of patience that lets you wade through neighbors yelling about dogs.
When my case was called, I stood with my folder stack and my comm, and Shauna sat behind me, quiet as prayer. I spoke about my gatepost and my garden and my bar-gouged porch. I held up photos of the lawn before and after the tent. I showed the diesel stain on the hay and the receipt from the company that came to remediate, $489. Alan from Hillstar did not show. Blaze did, in a black shirt with the sleeves pushed up, his jaw tight. She invited us, he said. It was family.
The judge asked, "Do you have written consent?" Blaze said, "We had a memorandum." The judge flipped through my copies and found it. "This memorandum is invalid due to forgery," he said, almost bored, because the notary's admission had been filed as a report. He looked at Blaze. "Do you have any receipts contradicting her receipts?" "No," Blaze said, which is such a clean word when it's honest. The judge awarded me the full amount plus filing fees. He also, with a small sigh, said, "Do not return to this property without the owner's invitation." Blaze made a noise in his throat and left before he could hear the end of the sentence. I texted Deputy Klein the ruling because I like all my lines tight. 2 days later, I got an email from the fire marshal. "We have issued citations to Hillstar Events for operating heaters in proximity to flammable materials and for lack of permit." There was a number, a date, and the potential fine. I didn't gloat. I planted zinnias. The petition to quiet title was next. We stood in a different courtroom, wood-paneled, quiet. Patience did most of the talking. She held up the chain of documents like a necklace. Deed, fake memorandum, affidavit of non-consent, notary admission. The judge signed the order clearing any claim by Hillstar Events to the property. I wanted to frame that order like a diploma. Instead, I put it in my receipt tin because that's where the rest of my life is. Shauna came to the ranch that Saturday with a pie from a bakery in Austin because sometimes you have to bring something sweet to a conversation you avoided. We sat on the porch and watched Midge chew her cud like a lady who takes her time with supper. Shauna said, "I gave them your number. I thought if they handled you, it would be not my problem." "I know," I said. "I could tell by the way you stopped calling me and management started calling me." She stared at the chickens like they were going to peck out the letters for her. She said in a rush, "I didn't take money from you, I swear." "I know," I said, "but you tried to take something else." She swallowed. "I did. I wanted to be the person who makes things happen." She looked at my hydrangeas. "I didn't see the person who already did." We were quiet long enough to hear Luther sigh. "Do you want to work on it?" I asked. "Not here, not with events. You, me." She nodded, tears again, but these were the kind that clean. "Yes." That night, Alan left a voicemail. "We would like to negotiate a last event to recoup our costs." I did not answer. Patience sent a final letter with the quiet title order. Hillstar went quiet. The Square Reader charges on my porch stopped. The Instagram story of the DJ on my steps turned into a memory my phone offered me every few weeks, and I did not look. Then came the last knot. A smear, small but oily. A Facebook post from Blaze's cousin in a community group. "Beware of older lady off 204 scamming young entrepreneurs. She faked being confused and then called the cops." It did what small smears do. It picked up linked. A few comments from people who weren't here tut-tutting about boomers and gatekeeping. I printed the post and tucked it into the public folder, the only one that made me sad. I called Maria at APS. "I don't want to chase every comment, but I also don't want this to be the story stuck to me." She suggested something simple, a statement on my own terms. So I wrote one. "My name is Marilyn. I am 66. I own this ranch. I love goats, quilting, and the song I'll Fly Away. My daughter and a company called Hillstar Events hosted unpermitted gatherings on my land. I asked them to stop, repeatedly. I documented, I called the right people, and I let my animals wander my lawn one evening because sometimes joy is also a witness. The courts have confirmed my ownership and awarded me damages. I am not confused. I am stubborn and kind, and both are assets at my age." I posted it on my closed church group only.
I didn't need the internet to clap. I needed my people to see me clear. Shauna took a job at a garden center in Austin, watering, propagating, learning plant Latin. She texted me photos of tiny roots, a fist of leaves. I texted her back photos of Dolores blowing a kiss, of the hydrangeas surprising us with a second bloom, of the quilt square I made from the torn nectarine fabric with an alpaca applique on top. We made a rule. We would see each other on Sundays, after church. We would talk about her week and mine. We would not discuss events, Hillstar, or any cousin's Facebook. In August, a letter came from the Secretary of State. The commission of Kyle Whitaker is suspended pending further review, and he has been assessed a civil penalty for failure to properly notarize. I did not show it to anyone but Patience and Maria. I did not post it. I made a peach cobbler and put a plate on the fence post with a note for Ray, for your ears and tractor. September brought a different letter, Blaze, representing himself, appealing the small claims judgment. The hearing was scheduled for October 1 at 9 a.m. I baked banana bread because court is always better with a slice after. In the hearing, Blaze tried a new shape, contrite. He said, "We were trying to create community. We didn't think she would mind." The judge looked at me, then at him. Community built on consent is called a party. Community built on trespass is called theft. He upheld the judgment. Blaze stared at the floor like it might give him a door. After, he passed me in the hall and said, "Thin as thread, you're mean."
No, I said, tired. I'm the owner. Don't click away, he'll get what's coming. Around that time, a reporter from a big station in Austin called. "We'd like to do a story on the alpaca party," she said, laughter in her voice. "No, thank you," I said again, because I had learned my lesson. Not every truth needs the megaphone of a stranger. Some truths are stitched into quilts, folded into pies, and sung in a church hall. The last letter I received from Hillstar was a check for $3,127 and a note that said, "Paid under protest." I endorsed it and deposited it with a sigh that sounded like wind through cedar. I made copies, stapled them to the small claims folder, and slid the whole thing into the back of the file cabinet under completed. There is a joy in that word when you have been holding your breath for months. On a cool evening in late October, as the sun thumbed its way down the hill, Shauna came over with a bag of mulch and a little maple tree in a bucket. "For fall," she said. We dug a hole behind the coop, hands dirty, nails ruined, hearts easing back into their old seats. "I am sorry," she said again, firm now, not begging. "I have a counselor I like. I'm working on the part of me that hustles because I'm scared." "I have a counselor too," I said, because women my age sometimes forget to say that out loud. We're all scared. We just pick different doors into the feeling. We watered the little tree and watched Dolores flick her ears at nothing we could see. The bell strap I'd tied on July 3rd hung on a nail in the barn, quiet and ready if Joy needed to be noisy again. The ranch held steady in the months that followed. Mornings were eggs warm from the coop, coffee that smelled like the sun rising inside a cup, and the steady hush of my cast iron when I lay bacon flat. Afternoons were fence checks, quilting in the shade, a nap if the air hummed just so. Evenings were gingham shadows and the rattling chorus of cicadas, and a porch that belonged to me, my animals, my hydrangeas, my peeled paint rocking chair with a cushion I stitched myself. There are things I keep on the little table by the door now. A set of extra latches, my trespass affidavit, a list of numbers labeled "if disruption." But most days, the only number I dial is Shauna's at 5:30 p.m. "How are the fiddle leaf cigs?" I ask playful. "Who asked you about hydrangeas?" She laughs and tells me which customers insisted their cactus needed more water and which ones whispered like plants are secret babies. At Christmas, she gave me a small plaque that says, "Owner." I put it on the porch next to the bell. She put a photo of Dolores in a tiny frame on her apartment shelf. We didn't mention Hillstar. We didn't need to. The court orders and quiet title and canceled notary commission sit in a cabinet where they belong. The story sits in our chest like a stone polished by a river, rounded, lighter.
I told you I opened the gates to let the animals have fun. And I did. But what I really did was open the gates to my own backbone. It's a thing you can misplace at 66 if you're not careful, under quilts and casseroles, under being nice and bending one more time. I found it out under the live oaks, bright as a dropped coin in grass. If you're a woman between 50 and 80 and you've been told you are making it weird when you ask for your own keys back, hear me. Make it weird. Make it official. Put it in a folder. Call the right numbers. Let your donkey bray right over a bad story. And when the dust settles, plant a maple. Hydrangeas too. You're allowed more flowers than trouble.
The clock on the stove read 11:03. Somewhere in Sycamore Hollow, a door shut. Somewhere in my chest, I made a promise to Hal I didn't know I'd been making for a decade. I will see this through. I didn't sleep that night. I ironed pillowcases I didn't need ironed and lined up spice jars by height and date like a battalion. At 5 a.m, when birds started the foolish gossip they do about sunrise, I sat at the kitchen table with Hal's letter and a cup of coffee black as river mud. I unfolded the yellow paper and read. E, if you're reading this, I didn't get to say this looking you in the eye. About our girl, she reached out to me 2 winters after she left. I kept it from you because she asked me to. She was scared, and I didn't ask enough questions at first. That's on me. When I finally asked, she told me enough to know she needed a safe place and time. I bought this house in the land trust to keep her name out of sight. I was going to bring you here when I could show you she was ready. I messed up by waiting. That's on me too. If I'm gone, you're the successor trustee. Help her. The rest is in the binder in the hall closet. H. I read it 3 times. The words left a print on me the way a hot pan leaves a ring on a wooden table. Dark, undeniable, a record of heat. I wasn't angry at him, not in the way I thought I'd be. I was angry at the distance we had both curated like a lawn, trimmed, acceptable, distant. I was angry that fear had wasted our time and love. In the hall closet, behind a stack of cheap paper towel packs, was a black 3-ring binder with a clear sleeve holding a page that said Sycamore Hollow Land Trust in 12-point font. Inside, the trust agreement naming Hal as trustee, and in neat print, successor trustee, Elaine Porter, beneficiary, Madeline Porter. There were also copies of wire transfers, emails with a Cincinnati attorney I'd never met, and a notarized letter signed by Maddie, different last name, that I will not repeat here because it was hers to share. But I will say this. It told me enough to make the hair lift on my arms, and enough to make me grateful Hal had chosen secrecy over spectacle. Our daughter had been surviving, and then she had been protecting someone smaller than herself. Mom? Maddie stood in the hallway, her sweater sleeves pushed up, hair rumpled by sleep. Do I get to read it? I handed her Hal's letter. I watched her read, her mouth shaping a little O in the middle. When she finished, she pressed the paper to her chest. He knew, she whispered, like it was a prayer. He knew, and he didn't make me tell. We turned to the trust binder together. On page 6, a clause let me up like a bolt. On the death or incapacity of the trustee, the successor trustee shall take immediate control and shall not be subject to power of attorney appointments purporting to act for the deceased trustee. I called Buckeye title with the sentence ready to read. Cullen, I said when he picked up, the property is held in a land trust. The trustee was my husband. I am the successor trustee. There is no lawful way a separate POA could have conveyed this without the trust paperwork. I have copies of all of it. He said, send them. Also, the Starbucks video request came back. The cameras only record inside. But we obtained the notary's phone GPS summary for that day with his consent. He was in Toledo at 2 p.m., not Columbus.
And one more thing, the notary told us he never met my husband. He believes someone stamped his name on a page he didn't notarize. I put him on speaker so Maddie could listen. "So your file is closed?" I asked. I wanted the words. "As of this morning, that closing is suspended pending investigation. We've notified the buyer and the realtor." I exhaled a breath I'd been carrying since the SUV first hove into view. "Thank you," I said. "I'll bring you the trust documents in person." By 9, I had a second binder, my favorite kind, the one with the clear front and an index of tabs I made with my labeler. The tabs read, Trust, Notary, HOA, Realtor, Threats, Video, Bank. I changed out of my pancake-stained shirt and into a navy church dress I'd worn to funerals, baptisms, and once to a county recorder retirement party. On our way out, we found a paper on the windshield. Clocks ticking. The T was cut fanciful, a show-off cursive I recognized from Stacy's business cards. I stuck it under the Threats tab. It Buckeye title, Cullen met us in the lobby. He was younger than his emails made him sound and had the look of a man who didn't expect this day to be interesting. He examined the trust documents with the reverence of a person who knows paper has power when it is lined up correctly. "This will do it," he said. "Do you give us permission to share with the county recorder and, if necessary, law enforcement?" "Yes," I said simply. "Share with whoever can untangle this without me going to jail for beaning someone with my skillet." He smiled at that, and I could tell that he was picturing the skillet. "Mrs. Porter, I know you don't need it, but you've got us in your corner."
After we left, we stopped at the Starbucks off Columbus Avenue, the one from the notary's false journal entry. I bought Owen a cake pop and Maddie a latte and myself a drip coffee that tasted like burnt courage. At a corner table, I opened the second safe deposit envelope, the one labeled Maddie, when you're ready. She read it silently, and it was like watching a drought break over a field. Her shoulders uncrumbled. She wiped her nose with a napkin. "He told me to forgive us," she said soft. "All of us." We went next to the Warren County Recorder. I recorded an affidavit of successor trustee, which is all I'll say about the document because I'm not here to teach anyone how to do anything illegal or legal. I'm telling you what I did, not what you should do. The clerk stamped it with a thunk that felt ceremonial. Then I asked, "Do buyers file notices when they're LLCs?" She pointed to the computer. I searched Sycamore Acquisitions, LLC, and found its organizer, a man named Richard Rico Alvarez. I took a printout. I held it next to my voicemail transcript where the caller had identified himself. It matched like a sock pulled from the back of the dryer that you thought you'd lost forever. Keep watching. There will be justice. On our way to the car, my phone pinged with a public Instagram story sent by Mrs. Kim with one of those gleeful text messages older women send when they know they have found gold. "Look what I found." The story showed Stacy at a wine bar on May 10 at 2:03 p.m. with the caption, "Bless this mama who does closings and mom duty. #multitask queen." Her little daughter waved at the camera in a booster seat. The angle captured the clock on the wall, 2:03 glowing in neon. Her GPS tag put her in Cincinnati, not Columbus. I took a screenshot and added it to the binder under Notary. At noon, we had an appearance at the HOA office because Kirk had emailed suggesting we discuss options. I brought both binders. "Mrs. Porter," he began, leaning back like the chair owed him something, "we can offer to waive half the fines if you'll sign a consent for sale to our recommended buyer. We can also expedite abatement to avoid further costs to you." "There will be no sale," I said, sliding the trust tab across the desk, and your abatement crew will not set foot on my property without my invitation. Here is the recorded affidavit of successor trustee. Here are emails from Buckeye Title suspending the closing. Here is a list of your threatened fines along with your letterhead. And here, I slid the threats tab forward, is a bagged note from my freezer I'm ready to hand to the sheriff. He glanced at it, waved a hand. We didn't write that. I have a neighbor's camera showing you a recommended realtor attempting entry with a locksmith, I said, and tapped the video tab. And if I have to, I'll bring Mrs. Kim and her classroom voice to every meeting you hold until the end of time. Kirk's smile frayed. This is all very dramatic, he said. We're just trying to keep our neighborhood tidy. You're trying to keep your racket tidy, I said. And yes, I regretted calling it that, but not enough to take it back. Watch your tone, Mrs. Porter. Watch your liability, I said, and watched the way his eyes darted to the corner where a security camera blinked. I'd like a copy of the bylaws, the minutes from the last 6 months, and any written agreements between the HOA and Sycamore Acquisitions or Kroll Realty. Printed, please. I said, please, the way my mother used to when she was sharpening a knife. By evening, other neighbors had started stopping by with information, the way birds bring twigs. A retired firefighter 2 doors down brought me a printout of a Facebook post where Stacy advertised off-market opportunities with motivated trustees. The neighborhood mom with 3 boys told me she'd been approached about selling problem homes more than once. A quiet man across the lane said he'd seen Mr. Leland and Stacy arrive together at odd hours in the spring. It was plainer than porch paint. A system of pressure, a market of fear. I didn't sleep again. I sorted papers. I pressed them flat. I labeled with a precision that would make my choir proud. At 2 a.m., I sat in the front room and listened to the soft whir of the refrigerator and the click of Owen's nightlight turning on and off as the sensor got confused by the moths. On the coffee table, Hal's photo with the fish watched me from the frame. We're doing it. We're actually doing it. At 9 a.m. the next morning, a sheriff's cruiser rolled down the street like a tune you know the words to. Behind it was a car I recognized from our church, Detective Laura Meacham's car. She and her wife come to Christmas Eve service every year because her mother drags them, and I have watched Laura nudge a candle into a cup for the person next to her with care. She stepped out in plain clothes. "Elaine," she said, friendly, "I heard your name at roll call and asked if I could take this one." "Who called?" I asked, startled. "Buckeye Title," she said. "They flagged a suspected fraudulent recording, a notary misuse, and a possible burglary attempt." We went inside. I set the binders out like communion. I talked. I played the voicemail. I showed her the Instagram story and the notary GPS summary. Mrs. Kim came over in her house shoes with a flash drive and a plate of melon cubes because she is an angel walking around in a cardigan. Detective Meacham took it all in with the measured patience of a person who has to sort drama from crime every day of her life.
Your watch to the end. Be click here. You will hear another story from my grandma.